Alright, time for the second patron-requested review. This time by Arthur D. Gonzalez Martin, as he asks us to review Twokinds. Two kinds of what? Webcomic. Oh yeah, I remember now. But why would you know about it? You're such a dirty feline. Before I begin, I should address this. Starting now, I will be accepting webcomics to review in the same vein as movies. As long as they're animal-themed or have a major animal-themed component to them, I'll review them, but I do keep the right to deny any I don't want to for what it may have. And this one, you'll see how far it is I can go before it becomes something I don't want to do. But unlike movies, since webcomics have varying lengths, the amount of pages I'll do will be limited due to having to keep up with other patrons I may have at the time. If anything, it's up to me as to how much of a webcomic I'll cover, so don't be discouraged if I can't do the entire thing, as who knows? Maybe I'll end up doing more outside requests, but no guarantees there. At any rate, let's talk about Twokinds. Twokinds is a fantasy adventure romance series that started October 22nd, 2003 by Tom Fishbach, whose inspiration draws from having seen anime, like My Neighbor Totoro was his first, and as a result, when he started this series, and is currently in its 12th year of production. It's also based off some personal history that's also reflected in his work, but we'll be seeing that as we go. Like I said, there's something about this that would almost have been a turnoff for me, but still. You'll see why I consider this to be the fairy tale or history's strongest disciple Kenichi of webcomics. I'll only be covering up to the end of chapter 3 for this review, as there are currently 18 chapters and at least 800 pages worth of content, though any peeks I've made will be mentioned, as I have skimmed through a bunch of it during initial readings. With that, let's begin. The prologue begins with our main character, Trace, a blue-haired youth who, given his Smash Brothers shirt, could be a Mii swordsman, who appears to have lost his memories. Hell, he doesn't even remember his own name, but he seems to retain his standard morality in helping people, as when he hears a cry for help, he seeks it out. This leads to our secondary main character, Flora, a tiger girl from the looks of it, or rather a Cadron, as this bandit-looking guy points out, and your head's worth quite a lot here. You'd be amazed what they pay for a hide like yours. Ew, they skin the animal people in this world? You're sick! They'd never do that in One Piece. Even though mink weren't around at the time, but still! Trace intervenes, but before a fight can ensue, the guy recognizes him as the Grand Templar. Great, is he the mastermind behind all the bad things happening in history? I bet there'd be assassins in this world stopping his kind. Either way, he leaves after leaving him with his name. Kinda too easy if you ask me. And it's then revealed that the bandit, or whatever, is really a woman! She'll be important later, but for now, Trace tries to figure out what kind of person this tiger girl is, since this is the kind of amnesia that makes you forget even what standard races are. Of course, it works differently all the time, so if anything, this is just how we, the reader, get acquainted to the rules and standards of this universe. At first, he's just willing to leave her alone despite what was said earlier, but she sticks to him like glue and makes those cute cat sounds. They eventually decide to rest for the night and... Now you know why I said this is the fairy tale of webcomics. See, characters in this series will often remove articles of clothing like their gray filibuster, because unlike Dreamkeepers, from what I've seen, it seems fan service tends to be more of a thing than actual character development or story progression. That's not to say it's a bad thing, but it becomes harder to invest when such distractions come in at the wrong time, and here... Well, just hold that thought, because this isn't the end of it. Also, it turns out she can talk. I thought you knew that. Judging from his reactions, I'd think not. Then again, neither would we, but I guess it's common you can. Then again, fantasy world, sentient beings, I should at least expect it. When Trace suggests going to town and getting supplies, Flora takes it the wrong way for something that will be brought up later on. But once Trace says she doesn't have to go if she doesn't want to, while also saying her name as he seems to know her somehow, curse you amnesia, she glomps him. Wonderful. As part of amnesia being a way to also foreshadow things, he dreams of someone being struck down by a Cadron woman, before waking up to find Flora gone and instead coming face to face with a wolfman. Actually is another Cadron. See, in this universe, Cadron take the form of either bipedal canines or felines, and while they can function like humans, they act and mature similar to real-life animals, so if anything, these could pass for were-beings. This one, named Seath, overpowers him before being stopped by Flora in her feral form, and whoa boy! Dude. And now you see why I may think of this as the Kenichi of webcomics, because even Fairy Tail at least knew when to cover up, even if it wasn't perfect. But here, they don't do any of that, and this would be the kind of thing that would make me not want to really put this up for review, since it would go outside my usual criteria, as this would be something for other, much more qualified critics to cover. But when I really think about it, it seems to still count as like the same kind of fan service as Fairy Tail in that it's soft core. Okay, remember how in El Arca you would have some female animals look close to human enough to where they would have bulges on their chest, yet because there isn't enough detailing on the character that it doesn't require any sort of censor box, despite being in the nude? Well, that's pretty much what's going on here. Because despite them looking close to human and being naked a lot, especially given some sexual relationships later on, the detailing never goes too far to where it would be considered like pornography or hardcore fan service. Instead, it's like with Mystique from the X-Men movies, where she's human, but because of her inhuman design, she can appear naked, since the detailing doesn't cross the line to where they wouldn't be able to get away with certain shots. Of course, I'm not a furry expert, so my assumptions are only based the same way as human fan service. But if I had to guess, this still counts for its PG-13 rating, since so far, from what I've seen in any page I peeked at, none of the human characters show this much service, so there's actually a compromise given the established loophole. But my point is this: if you try to request a movie or webcomic that's nothing but nudity and or sex, I'll probably turn it down, as I mostly care for story and characters. Fan service, I feel, should be a secondary thing, as there's only so much I can take before it becomes uncomfortable to bear. Anyway, they exchange words, mostly in what I guess is a Cadron exclusive language, even though she blurts out in human tongue that she would kill Trace if needed, which puts him on edge, but it gets Seath to leave, and she explains that that was just to get him to do so. Also, he was apparently her fiancé who ran off when their caravan was attacked. There'll be more on that later, but for now, the artwork is different? Huh? Okay, a lot of these earlier chapters seem to alternate between styles, either because Tom was trying to find one that was more appealing, or maybe he had others that would help him at times. I can't really say. Either way, it's evident that this is somebody's first time doing a major comic project like this, but believe me, it does actually improve over time. I don't know when the exact evolutionary points are, but from what I've peeked at, the style becomes more refined and better detailed to where it becomes like its own thing. So that's something I will say about the art. Regardless of how you may think of it now, I think for a beginner at the time, it looks pretty decent. The change later on becomes noticeably improved for the better. For now, I will say that the earlier style worked better, as this one feels either too bright or the character design's a little off. They arrive at a town where, of course, Flora stays behind as Trace heads to an inn. No Cadron, huh? Yes, I do have to wonder what they have against the animal folk of this world, and wait, that's a cat girl! What the hell? And of course, these people know Trace, who apparently went missing to kill Cadron. So judging from that, it sounds like humans are at war with them and he's a major player in something. But why the cat girl maid? We then get introduced to our next main character, Keith, being harassed by database error. What? Because he looks like a Cadron, but in fact, he's a Basseton. What's a Basseton? Well, according to the fan wiki, they are a race of feline lagomorph beings who may look like Cadron, but actually aren't, if only because they live lives closer to how humans would, but with some enhancements. And I have a problem with this. Having two different beast races that have mammalian forms like this just adds complications to whatever sort of conflict there is, because if it's okay for a Basseton to exist in human society while a Cadron is not, what's to stop people like database error from attacking them and causing issues with them? Supposedly they are rare as they come from an island, but still, it just seems weird that in this universe there's one animal race that's more human-like in growth while the other is human-like but still on the level of an animal. As for Karen here, there is a reason for why she looks like that, and it's kinda weird. Then again, it is still early in the story. We still don't know much about anything, like why we don't know DBE's real name, as opposed to his fandom-accepted placeholder name. So hopefully things pick up soon. Anyway, Keith was looking for Trace so he could bring him back to his city, but since Trace has amnesia and is doing his own thing, Keith is willing to follow him for now. Otherwise, Trace finds a shop to hopefully bring something for Flora and ends up receiving a subtle seed crystal from the shopkeeper. But it turns out, that's not the shopkeeper! Meanwhile, Flora starts worrying about Trace, and even though she wants to go home and get married, in one fantasy she sees herself getting married to Trace. Sounds like a romance anime, where the main female lead falls for the main male lead. Every time. Also, it turns out she was a slave. Relevance coming soon. For now, since Keith knows the problems about Cadron and humans, he sets himself to kill her, but Trace stops him. In fact, following a flashback where he, before becoming the Grand Templar, demonstrates his magic with red hair highlights. And said magic he reawakens to knock Keith away. Okay, next time you plan on exploding, try giving me a little warning. All he did was magic push you into a tree. Also, how can you say she's evil? She's playing with a butterfly like a kitten would. In fact, that butterfly kinda looks like Philemon from the Persona games. Could she have the wild card? Meanwhile, Karen and her friends are out looking for Trace, but end up running into a woman named Rain, who looks similar to the Grand Templar from the flashback. Coincidence? I think not. Trace ends up showing the necklace he bought, and while at first Flora is shocked about it, she does end up taking it, and it broke the panel. Oh crap, now I gotta reload, don't I? Actually, that was magic. Apparently this thing is used in human marriages to bind people together. Oh jeez, it's like the friendship necklaces you see in RPGs. Look, if you don't want to build up affinity, don't take the item. You'll only grow too attached and may lose out on your earlier love interest. And she wears it anyway because... Weeks pass, and I guess I'm just used to fantasy worlds that don't feel like it takes weeks to get to places, because given Keith's anti-Cadron personality, I'm amazed he's tolerated her for this long. Also, Trace, I can't take it anymore. Please, make love to me, Trace. Actually, this turns out to be a dream, as despite him accepting her, only to lead her to killing him, since she was intending to do so anyway, she wakes up fully naked. Remember what I said about this being the furry equivalent to softcore fan service? And remember what I said back in Dreamkeepers? You probably wouldn't care if it were Alien or a Monster Lady. It's just for some reason, only the furry characters people reject. Anyway, Seath wants her to kill Trace now, but she's having second thoughts. That is until he brings up the fact that not only of how many Cadron he's killed, but also because he was the one to kill her family! Oh wait, he lied. Bastard! Anyway, after deceiving Keith, who continues to be a bigot, she contemplates killing, but even if he did do it, he isn't the same person. I cannot kill someone who's been so kind to me. Is this really part of the masked woman's plan? To bring these two together despite the fact one has amnesia and is potentially some kind of mass murderer of a race of beast folk? Either way, Keith attacks her, but once again is stopped by Trace. Flora runs off, scared that this brought him back to his old self, while also thinking he killed Keith and wants to have sex. Okay, are you secretly Juvia after mixing with Gray's refusal to keep his clothes on? Anyway, Trace catches up to her and she admits to her kind being at war. But Trace doesn't care because of what he's going through right now, but still wants to be with her. As for Keith, he got launched into a tree, of course. Third chapter, and the one we'll end on at the end, Trace and Flora plan to go to the next city to heal up, with Trace promising to keep her safe from humans. Meanwhile, with what is to be called the second party, gets the rundown on what happened with Rain and how she was a slave to some Cadron. See how the shoe is on the other foot, huh? We also find out why Karen looks like this. It's because Trace cursed her into that form because she was annoying, though she liked having it. But wait, you can curse people into other race forms? Then again, if Slightly Damned can have gods curse people into animals, what's stopping a Grand Templar from doing it? Meanwhile, Trace and group arrive on the outskirts of a city, with what appears to be a futuristic tower belonging to the Templars. You know, I was kidding about the Assassin's Creed thing. Don't bring future tech into this! Okay, but really, fanservice aside, this could work for a Tales plot since they tend to mix fantasy and future tech all the time. But this leads to 4 years ago when he overthrew the previous Grand Templar by turning her into a Cadron. Turns out she was the mother of Rain, and from the dialogue, something must have happened with him and the Cadron to be saying, "Feel the pain I've been feeling." Anyway, both parties converge into the city, though Flora has to pretend to be a slave girl in full nudity, of course. He finds a healer and forces him to see medical aid to her since I guess being Grand Templar means you're like the shepherd from Zestiria and get all your services for free. Sorta. Also, hi small-breasted worries trope, and hot spring scene.
Everybody get naked!
And just as I thought, only the actual furry character gets full nude shots while human characters get standard covering, with a slight tease but never going that far. Oh hey, antagonists! Seems the masked woman from before is named Neutral, and they are up to something in regards to Trace. What are they going to do? Well, nothing now, because more fan service!
And there was much rejoicing.
DBE pulls Trace and actually wants him to go back to hating Cadron. Dude, if the old him was an asshole while the current him is a nice guy, which would you take? He gets kicked out, but Trace gets to stay, because amnesiacs get all the ladies. Well, too bad his new girl don't like that her breasts are smaller, and pulls him out. They make chase as a storm hits while the two head to a tavern, and Keith finally shows up after being left behind. At the tavern... Hey, wait a minute. Aren't you that guy who sold Trace that crystal? Why are you suddenly a tavern owner, and why do you keep Cadron in the basement in cages? Oh wait, duh. I think I'll have her stay in my room for tonight. Ooh, this will be interesting. You're telling me? Who the hell are you, and why are you following them? Anyway, I think we all know what's coming. They get to their room. Flora is happy at first that she gets a bed, but is then disappointed once Trace reminds her that there's only one bed. But it's not like he's gonna have her sleep on the floor, which is pretty good since I was about to pop this on him.
I will not sleep in the bathtub. You're gonna sleep in the bathtub.
Flora starts admitting why she's been trying to act human. It's because if she acted like a normal Cadron, then he'd see her as nothing but an animal. I don't know. So far you have all the human stuff down, even wearing clothes a lot, but... Anyway, the man brings them stuff, including a bottle with an obvious magic item inside, as well as some special milk. For Flora, and judging from the implications, I guess it's supposed to be their form of alcohol. I mean, felines in fiction have a thing for milk, sure, but... Wait, the necklace is back? Actually, I forgot it was on her, and she says she tucked it into her fur. How thick is your fur to hide a small-sized crystal like that? And uh-oh, I think the milk was like alcohol because now she's aroused. or drunk or something. Jeez, she's worse than the fairy tale girls were at the Christmas party. No, 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 no. God, no. You do not want to see what happens when they get drunk. And humorously enough, everyone shows up to see what looks like was sex between the two, plus a pizza guy shows up. Actually, I'm okay with the pizza guy. I mean, the Tales franchise has pizza all the time in their games, so this is acceptable fantasy food. I imagine the joke was they think they were going to do it, but ordered pizza for what is a sexy time pizza party. Okay, now I can see why that might have been funny for a misunderstanding, but yeah. Things settle down after they sneak off, and I guess the second party decides that, since there's pizza and ale, might as well call a truce for now. Keith takes the enchanted ale and...
Yes!
I guess Mystery Guy really wanted Trace to hook up with Flora sexually, but it didn't work since the Adrian hater got it. And... well, it may or may not influence something that happens later. As for Flora, she wakes up from her little drunken spree, and since Trace is still asleep, she decides to stay with him a bit longer and is totally happy with it. And that's where I draw the line for now, as there's 15 more chapters of this, as of this writing. But yeah, so far, not really feeling it in terms of humor. Like, it isn't fairy tale humor where it was funny all the time and had a good enough cast to keep me interested for their sake. This felt more like it was trying to do that, but have a thing for the fan service even more so than usual. But on a much more controversial scale. Actually, that statement doesn't really hold water when I have to consider that later chapters explore much more than just a cheesy romance story between a human and furry character. Much more that I've decided I will do more reading of, as I may actually do more chapter-based reviews of this series in the future. It's slow right now, as the plot doesn't seem to have really gotten off the ground. It's still trying to introduce characters and establish things that may matter later on, while focusing on the romance between Trace and Flora. To its credit, despite some misgivings I may have with the concept and how it goes about with the fan service, at least it doesn't bother me the way Kenichi handled it, as I do see a potential in the kind of romance story there is here. In fact, there is something much later in the story that involves the two that I don't want to spoil anything major, but if you consider how long they spend time together and what can spawn from that, I think you know which issue it is then. And I'm actually interested to see where it started and where it goes from there. You know, from the peaks I've had. Plus again, the art style does end up improving greatly, and I want to see how and when it happens. There's no doubt that Tom has passion for what he does and wants to tell the story how he wants, so I'm at least willing to give it a chance despite people's thoughts on the whole fur service. But in the end, fur service is still fan service, no matter what you call it. So my hope is that there can be more story to care for than the former. So sometime next year, I'll continue my little journey into this seemingly popular webcomic the way I continue reading into fairy tale. They may have problems and be very fan servicey, but they're still fun to be had, and I hope to find it here too. I'm the Media Hunter, media's my prey, and reviewing them my way.